No one can tell you how long your online course needs to be. So then when you're trying to search Google for how long should my online course be, it's near impossible to find the answer. And no one should be giving you that answer. What happens if I say your course shouldn't be anything longer than 5 hours for your students to consume? And then everything you need to give them, you cannot fit in 5 hours. And then your students walk away without resolving their problem. You see, an online course, we cannot put a specific length to each one. However, there is the risk of making an online course so huge that no one ever finishes it. So how do we find that sweet spot? How do we find that balance between knowing how long our course should be and not going over the top or extending it for too long? So while there is no right or wrong answer, I want to share with you today 3 tips on what will help you to be able to have an online course that fits within the limits that you need. Before we have a look at the 3 tips, I'm here to help you design, create and launch your online course. As an instruction designer, each week I share with you course creation tips on my YouTube channel, so don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button so you are notified. So let's start with tip number 1, which is not a new tip, I'm sure you've heard it before, is putting your course into bite-sized chunks. So what that means by bite size is that it's manageable. You're not expecting someone to sit down and listen to a recorded webinar for an hour and a half without any interaction, without any tasks. Right? We want bite-sized chunks that in this busy world that we live in with so many distractions, that we're able to take a section of your course, a lesson, consume it, and then go and do a task. So in that tip, while I do recommend that you have bite-sized chunks, that you also complement those bite-sized chunks with tasks. So for example, it might be a 5 to 10 minute video that are followed by specific tasks or specific actions that your students need to do, whether that's practicing how to do something or whether that is researching and creating a project, whatever it might be. Put a bite-sized chunk alongside with some tasks and actionable tasks to do. Tip number 2, to make sure that we're not going too far in this course and we're creating a huge course, is to limit it to certain bundles or certain modules, whatever you want to call them. I call them learning outcomes. Now those learning outcomes then become my chapters or my modules for each of my courses, and I like to limit them to between 3 to 5 learning outcomes. So if you have bundles, if you have modules, if you have whatever you call in them, when you bunch lessons together and they sit within a module or a chapter, make sure that each one of them has an outcome and that you keep that between 3 to 5 outcomes. And each of those outcomes combined help your student to be able to achieve an overall goal. Now you can possibly push that out to about 7 learning outcomes, but I wouldn't go anything beyond that. If you do want help with learning outcomes, I've got several videos here on my YouTube channel to help you, and I'll put them in the description below. Finally, tip number 3. Who's the best person to tell you how long your online course should be? Your students. And the best way to understand that is to collect feedback. Whether you're doing this in market research at the very beginning of your course or whether you're doing that throughout your course, make sure that you're consistently collecting feedback from your students to understand if you are giving them too much, if you're giving them too little, if they need some different types of content styles. But to answer the question of how long should my course be, your students will be able to answer that question for you. Okay, so to help you not create a huge course, but to also make sure that you don't create one that's too small, the 3 tips are to make sure you create bite-sized chunks so it seems more manageable. Even though it might be really long, it's more manageable to work through. Make sure that you keep your learning outcomes to between 3 to 5, and if you do want to go beyond that, don't go anything beyond 7. And finally, make sure that you do collect feedback from your students and to see if your course is too long or too little or if they need anything else. Okay, that is all for me today. If you do have any questions or you want to hear more about how long your online course should be, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button, as each week I do put a new video on my YouTube channel about course creation. Until next time, happy course creating!